Welcome to Glacial Sleep, your serene refuge, where each snowflake tells us profound secrets from the most remote regions of Earth. Here, between cutting winds and eternal snows of the Mongolian steppes, we explore stories of courage and resilience, where nomadic communities found, against all odds, a way to preserve ancient traditions and prosper in one of the world's harshest environments. Tonight, we'll dive deep into the ancestral and modern techniques that allow Mongolian herders to resist extreme cold and vast isolation, unveiling the mysteries of portable dwellings and the intelligent use of available steppe resources. We'll also speak about the strength of human spirit that transcends geographical limits and creates resilient communities in the boundless white and silent vastness of the Mongolian plateau. Throughout our journey, we'll encounter accounts from elderly herders, young nomads, and surprising adaptations that transform the impossible into a sustainable way of life. Even Mongolia's silence, so oppressive and pure, carries poetry of existence and hope for the future of these unique communities. So settle in, let the tranquility of endless steppes invade your mind, and allow yourself to travel in peace while we discover together the stories of this nomadic resistance. In this narrative, we'll celebrate the tenacity of these mobile communities and reflect on what we can learn from them about adaptability and the strength of human spirit facing the most relentless challenges of modernization and climate change. It's a question that seems simple, perhaps even obvious at first. Of course, it's difficult to live in Mongolia's extreme cold, but the deeper you dive into it, the more it chills your mind like a steppe wind that reveals layers of nomadic adaptation that challenge everything we thought we knew about the limits of mobile life in a rapidly changing world. Where are you watching from? What temperature is it there right now? Are you warming up in a cozy bed in Sao Paulo at 25 degrees C? Or listening from a heated apartment in New York facing 40 degrees Fahrenheit in winter? Tell me in the comments. It's always a joy to see our nomadic community spread around the world, each one experiencing their own version of shelter and warmth, while we explore how others create home in temperatures that could freeze vodka solid. Get comfortable. Feel at ease. You don't need to remember every detail of this journey across Mongolia's frozen steppes. You don't need to take notes or stay alert. Just let the words pass through you like the gentle steppe wind, carrying stories of resistance and nomadic adaptation that have crossed centuries of migration and survival. And as we begin this gentle exploration through the coldest inhabited territories of the Mongolian steppes, remember that this video is only for educational and relaxation purposes and is not intended as medical advice or substitute for professional treatment. Ready? Let's begin our journey into the heart of nomadic resilience. What exactly does it mean to survive as a Mongolian nomad at 40 degrees? This temperature is so extreme that vodka freezes solid, and exposed skin can suffer frostbite in minutes. For most people, 40 degrees C is just a number on a weather report, a meteorological curiosity from distant lands. But for Mongolian herders who face this reality for months each year, it's a force that shapes every aspect of their existence, from the construction of their homes to the rhythm of their migrations. For over 1,000 years, Mongolian nomads have developed one of the world's most sophisticated mobile survival systems. These aren't just techniques for staying alive in harsh conditions, but an entire civilization built around the principle of movement and adaptation. The traditional Mongolian lifestyle demonstrates that true mastery of extreme environments doesn't come from fighting against nature, but from learning to dance with its rhythms. The foundation of nomadic survival lies in understanding that nothing is permanent except change itself. When temperatures plummet to 40 degrees during what Mongolians call the 9 nines, 9 periods of 9 days marking the deepest winter, families don't hunker down and wait for spring. Instead, they continue their ancient patterns of movement, following invisible highways across the steppes that have been traveled for generations. Imagine a family whose entire world fits into structures that can be assembled or disassembled in under 2 hours. Their home, their livelihood, their possessions, everything designed for mobility while providing protection against temperatures that would kill the unprepared within hours. The gur, or yurt, isn't just shelter. It's a masterpiece of engineering that creates a warm microclimate using principles perfected over centuries of trial and refinement. But survival at 40 degrees Celsius requires more than good shelter. Mongolian nomads have developed a complex understanding of livestock management that turns animals into partners in survival rather than simply sources of food. During harsh winters known as dzud, when snow and ice cut off access to grazing land, The relationship between herder and herd becomes a delicate dance of mutual dependency. The clothing system alone represents generations of innovation. The traditional deal, a thick robe often lined with lamb fur, works in conjunction with layered wool garments made from camel, yak, and sheep. Every piece serves multiple functions. The deal can become a blanket, a windbreak, or even emergency shelter when needed. What makes this survival system truly remarkable is its sustainability. Unlike survival techniques that depend on depleting resources, the nomadic way of life has maintained ecological balance for over a millennium. Herders move their animals in patterns that allow grasslands to recover, creating a system where human survival actually supports environmental health rather than destroying it. The psychological aspect of nomadic survival is equally sophisticated. Living at 40 degrees C requires mental resilience that comes from viewing extreme weather not as an enemy to defeat, but as a predictable partner in an ancient dance. The 9/9s tradition provides a framework that transforms the seemingly endless Mongolian winter into a series of manageable phases, each with its own challenges and opportunities. The Mongolian Jir represents one of humanity's most ingenious responses to extreme cold and constant movement, but calling it simply portable architecture misses its true genius. The GR is designed to work with wind rather than against it, transforming Mongolia's most dangerous force into an ally for survival. Traditional Jir construction follows principles that modern architects are only beginning to understand. The circular structure has no corners where wind can catch and create destructive pressure points. Instead, wind flows around the curved walls, creating a natural aerodynamic shell that becomes more stable as wind speed increases. This isn't accidental. It's the result of centuries of refinement by people whose lives depended on getting the physics exactly right. The winterization process reveals the Jir's true sophistication. Families add multiple layers of felt to walls and roof, but not randomly. Each layer is positioned to create air gaps that trap warm air while allowing moisture to escape. The outer canvas layer isn't just weather protection. It's positioned to create convection currents that help regulate internal temperature and humidity. The most crucial element is the roof design. The crown, or tunduk, serves as both structural center and environmental control system. During extreme cold, it can be partially sealed to retain heat, but never completely closed. This would create dangerous carbon monoxide buildup from the central fire. The positioning of the smoke hole, combined with the Jir's internal air circulation, creates a system where fresh oxygen enters while toxic gases escape, maintaining breathable air even when temperatures outside could kill in minutes. Inside the Jir, every element serves survival functions. The floor layout isn't arbitrary. It's designed around thermal zones. The area around the central fire pit maintains temperatures suitable for cooking and gathering. Sleeping areas are positioned to take advantage of rising warm air, while storage areas for cold-sensitive items are placed in the warmest zones. The door system demonstrates nomadic engineering at its finest. Traditional Jir doors are double-layered with felt padding between layers. They're positioned to face south whenever possible, taking advantage of any available solar heat while protecting against prevailing northern winds. The threshold is raised to prevent cold air from flowing directly into the living space, a detail that can mean the difference between life and death during blizzards. What makes Jir construction truly remarkable is its modularity. Every component is sized and shaped to be transported on horseback or by modern vehicles. Nothing is too large for one person to handle. Yet when assembled, the structure can house extended families and withstand winds that would destroy conventional buildings. The Jir's relationship with its environment extends beyond mere shelter. The structure breathes with the landscape, expanding and contracting with temperature changes without losing structural integrity. In extreme cold, the felt contracts, creating a tighter seal. In warmer weather, materials expand, allowing better ventilation. This isn't designed behavior. It's an emergent property that nomads learned to read and use over generations. Modern additions to traditional gear design show how ancient wisdom adapts to contemporary challenges. Solar panels can be easily mounted on the crown structure. Small wind generators work with the Jir's aerodynamics. Modern insulation materials are incorporated into traditional layering systems. These aren't replacements for traditional techniques. They're enhancements that multiply the effectiveness of proven methods. You might think that Mongolian nomads facing 40-degree winters would focus entirely on immediate survival, finding shelter, conserving heat, rationing food until spring arrives. But the reality reveals a fascinating paradox. The deeper the winter becomes, the more precisely nomads follow an ancient timing system that treats the harshest season, not as an emergency, but as a predictable cycle with its own opportunities and rhythms. The 9/9s tradition transforms what could be seen as survival chaos into an elegant calendar of adaptation. Each 9-day period brings specific weather patterns, animal behaviors, and survival tasks that have been observed and refined for over 1,000 years. Rather than simply enduring winter, nomads use this system to thrive within it, turning extreme cold into a resource rather than just an obstacle. During the first 9, when temperatures begin their serious descent toward 40 degrees C, experienced herders aren't panicking about the approaching cold. Instead, they're reading subtle signs in animal behavior and wind patterns that tell them exactly how severe this particular winter will be. A horse's coat thickness, the way sheep cluster together, the direction of early snow drifts. These become precise meteorological instruments that guide crucial decisions about migration routes and resource allocation. The paradox deepens during the 3rd and 4th 9s, typically the coldest periods. While logic suggests this would be the time for minimal activity and maximum conservation, nomadic families often increase certain activities. This is prime time for processing winter meat, crafting winter gear, and even conducting long-distance travel on routes that become accessible only when rivers and marshlands freeze solid. What appears to be counterintuitive risk-taking is actually sophisticated resource management. The extreme cold that threatens survival also preserves meat without refrigeration, creates highways across previously impassable terrain, and provides raw materials, like perfectly clear ice, that aren't available during warmer seasons. The temporal paradox extends to daily rhythms within each 9. Families don't simply hide from the cold. They schedule activities around temperature fluctuations that occur even during extreme weather. Early morning hours, though coldest, often provide the clearest weather for essential tasks like checking livestock or moving to new locations. Midday warmth, even when temperatures remain well below freezing, becomes precious time for maintenance activities that require dexterity. This sophisticated timing system reveals something profound about nomadic survival philosophy. Extreme conditions aren't problems to be solved, but patterns to be understood and utilized. The 9/9s tradition treats winter not as a season to be endured, but as a partner in an annual dance that has specific steps, rhythms, and opportunities. The psychological impact of this temporal framework cannot be overstated. Instead of seeing winter as an undefined period of suffering that might last forever, families experience it as a series of manageable phases, each with clear beginning and end points. This transforms mental survival from desperate day-to-day endurance into confident navigation through familiar territory. Modern weather forecasting hasn't replaced the 9/9 system, it has enhanced it. Contemporary nomads use satellite weather data to confirm traditional observations, creating a hybrid knowledge system that combines ancient wisdom with modern precision. This isn't traditional knowledge being replaced by technology, but rather traditional knowledge being amplified and verified through technological tools. Mongolian nomadic survival operates on principles that could be called migration mathematics, complex calculations that determine when, where, and how fast families must move to stay ahead of deadly weather while maintaining access to resources their livestock need to survive. These aren't random wanderings across empty steppes. Every migration follows routes refined over generations, with stopping points calculated to provide optimal shelter, grazing, and access to water, even when temperatures reach 40 degrees. The mathematics involve variables most settled people never consider: grass quality under different snow conditions, wind protection at specific elevations, proximity to emergency shelter, and the energy cost of movement versus the energy cost of staying put. A nomadic family must calculate the carrying capacity of winter pastures, not just in terms of available grass, but in terms of how much energy their animals will expend to reach that grass through snow and ice. Sometimes a location with less grass but easier access provides better nutrition for livestock than a resource-rich area that requires too much energy to utilize effectively. The timing of these movements requires understanding weather patterns that extend far beyond local conditions. Decisions about migration often depend on weather systems approaching from thousands of kilometers away. Traditional knowledge includes reading cloud formations, wind shifts, and animal behaviors that indicate weather changes days before they arrive. This early warning system allows families to position themselves advantageously before extreme weather hits. Winter migration routes often seem counterintuitive to outsiders. Rather than heading south toward warmer regions, nomadic families might move north toward better wind protection or east toward areas where snow conditions favor their particular mix of animals. Each family's herd composition, the ratio of sheep to goats to horses to camels, influences optimal migration strategies, as different animals have different strengths and vulnerabilities in various winter conditions. The social mathematics of migration are equally complex. Individual families don't migrate in isolation. They coordinate movements with extended networks of relatives and neighbors. This creates informal convoy systems where multiple families can share resources, provide mutual assistance during emergencies, and combine their knowledge to make better decisions about routes and timing. Emergency calculations form a crucial part of migration mathematics. Every movement must include backup plans for sudden weather changes, injured animals, or mechanical failures of vehicles and equipment. Nomadic families maintain mental maps of shelter locations, emergency supply caches, and alternative routes that can be activated when primary plans become impossible. The energy economics of winter migration involve constant optimization. Families must balance the fuel costs of transportation, the energy requirements of animals during movement, the caloric needs of humans during travel, and the resources available at potential destinations. Moving too often wastes energy. Moving too seldom risks being trapped in unsustainable locations. Modern technology has added new variables to migration mathematics without eliminating traditional calculations. GPS systems help with navigation, but nomads still read natural landmarks because technology can fail. Weather satellites provide data, but traditional weather signs remain crucial because satellites can't predict hyperlocal conditions that determine whether a specific valley will be sheltered or exposed during a particular storm. The mathematics extend beyond pure survival to economic sustainability. Migration patterns must consider access to markets for animal products, fuel availability, veterinary services, and educational opportunities for children. These factors create additional constraints that must be balanced against survival requirements, making migration planning a complex optimization problem with multiple, sometimes competing objectives. There's a fundamental assumption about nomadic life that seems logical. Since nomads have been following the same migration patterns for centuries, they should be perfectly adapted to handle whatever weather Mongolia throws at them. Their traditional knowledge, tested across generations, should provide reliable protection against even the most extreme conditions. According to this reasoning, climate change and modernization should have minimal impact on nomadic communities. After all, if they've survived 40-degree temperatures for over 1,000 years, surely they can adapt to minor variations in weather patterns or the availability of modern conveniences like improved gear and communication technology. Yet across Mongolia's steppes, we observe a phenomenon that challenges this logic completely. Traditional nomadic communities experiencing unprecedented survival crises, not because winters are becoming harsher, but because the predictable patterns their ancestors relied upon are becoming unreliable. This paradox reveals something crucial about the nature of traditional adaptation systems. Nomadic survival doesn't depend on being generally tough or resourceful. It depends on precise calibration to specific, predictable environmental patterns. When those patterns shift, even slightly, the entire system can become dangerously misaligned. The Dzud phenomenon illustrates this perfectly. Traditional Mongolian knowledge includes sophisticated strategies for surviving Dzud, severe winter conditions when ice prevents livestock from accessing grass beneath snow. But climate change is creating new types of Dzud that don't follow historical patterns. Rain falling during winter months creates ice layers that traditional techniques can't penetrate. Temperature fluctuations cause freeze-thaw cycles that destroy grass quality in ways ancestors never encountered. More subtly, the timing of weather events is shifting in ways that disrupt the delicate synchronization between migration patterns and resource availability. Traditional routes timed for specific grazing windows find those windows opening earlier or later than expected. leaving families in locations with insufficient resources or forcing migrations during weather conditions historically considered impassable. Modern infrastructure creates additional pattern disruptions. Mining operations and urban development block traditional migration routes, forcing detours that weren't calculated into ancestral knowledge systems. New roads provide transportation advantages, but also create dependencies on fuel and vehicle maintenance that traditional nomadic life never required. The most insidious disruption comes from the erosion of knowledge transmission systems. As younger nomads gain access to modern education and urban opportunities, the intensive mentorship required to learn traditional survival skills is being interrupted. Skills that took generations to develop are being lost in single-generation gaps. This creates a situation where communities possess some traditional knowledge but lack the complete, integrated systems their ancestors used. Partial knowledge can be more dangerous than no knowledge at all, leading to overconfidence in conditions that require complete mastery of traditional techniques. The paradox extends to the relationship between traditional and modern survival tools. GPS devices can provide precise navigation, but they can't replace the deep environmental reading skills that help nomads choose optimal routes. Weather forecasting gives advance warning of storms, but it can't substitute for the local environmental knowledge needed to find microclimates and natural shelter during extreme weather. Perhaps most challenging, the economic pressures of modern life are forcing changes in herd composition and migration timing that optimize for market access rather than survival resilience. These economically rational decisions can leave families vulnerable to weather extremes their ancestors would have avoided through different herd management and timing strategies. When we imagine Mongolia, we often picture it as vast emptiness, an endless expanse of flat grassland stretching to the horizon, with nomadic families scattered randomly across uniform terrain. This mental image suggests that location doesn't matter much, that anywhere on the steppes is essentially the same as anywhere else, just empty space where nomads wander freely. But the true geometry of nomadic survival reveals a landscape far more complex and structured than this simplistic vision. The Mongolian steppes operate according to what could be called invisible topography, subtle variations in elevation, wind patterns, water access, and microclimate that create a three-dimensional survival map known intimately by nomadic families, but invisible to untrained eyes. Every seemingly empty stretch of grassland contains specific zones with different survival characteristics. Areas that appear identical to outsiders offer dramatically different advantages for winter survival. A depression that's invisible from a kilometer away might provide crucial wind protection during blizzards. A slight rise that barely registers visually could mean the difference between accessible grazing and snow-covered grass that livestock can't reach. The geometry of water access creates invisible networks across the steppes. Wells, springs, and seasonal water sources form connected systems that determine possible migration routes and camping locations. During winter, when surface water freezes, knowledge of which water sources remain accessible becomes literally life or death information. These water networks create highways and boundaries across seemingly open landscape. Wind patterns add another layer to this invisible geometry. Experienced nomads read the land like meteorologists, identifying areas that will be protected during storms and areas that will become wind tunnels funneling deadly cold. Hills and valleys create complex air circulation patterns that can turn a mild location into a death trap, or transform an exposed area into a surprisingly sheltered microclimate. The seasonal transformation of this geometry adds temporal complexity. Areas that provide excellent summer grazing might become winter death traps when prevailing winds shift. Valleys that offer winter protection might flood during spring melt, becoming impassable for months. The same physical location can cycle through being ideal, marginal, and deadly depending on season and weather conditions. Traditional camping spots aren't chosen randomly. They represent generations of accumulated knowledge about optimal positioning within this invisible landscape. The best locations provide multiple advantages: wind protection, water access, good grazing, defensible positions, and escape routes if conditions deteriorate rapidly. These locations are known by name and passed down through families like valuable inheritance. Modern GPS technology has revealed how precisely nomadic families navigate this invisible topography. Routes that appear random when plotted on basic maps reveal elegant efficiency when overlaid with detailed topographic meteorological, and resource data. What looks like wandering is actually sophisticated navigation through multi-dimensional landscape features. The social geometry of nomadic life adds another layer of complexity. Families don't just navigate physical landscape, they navigate social landscape composed of kinship networks, reciprocal obligation systems, and territorial understandings between different groups. These social boundaries and connections create additional invisible highways and boundaries that influence movement patterns. Climate change is altering the geometry of survival by shifting the invisible topographic features that nomads depend on. Changes in precipitation patterns modify which areas provide reliable water access. Altered wind patterns change the protective characteristics of valleys and ridges. Even small shifts in temperature averages can change which locations provide viable microclimate advantages during extreme weather. Understanding this invisible geometry helps explain why nomadic survival skills can't be easily replicated by outsiders. It's not enough to have good equipment and general survival knowledge. Effective nomadic survival requires intimate familiarity with specific landscape features and their seasonal variations, knowledge that takes decades to acquire and lifetimes to master. There's something deeply moving in the idea that every time you hear wind whistling across the Mongolian steppes, you're listening to conversations between generations of nomads. This same wind may have carried the voices of children learning to identify weather patterns from their grandparents, the laughter of families gathering around fires and jeers that stood on these same grazing grounds centuries ago. Everything we understand about human resilience in extreme environments comes from listening carefully to these voices carried on the steppe wind. By studying how nomadic families adapt their ancient knowledge to contemporary challenges, how their survival techniques evolve while maintaining essential wisdom, we access a language spoken through felt and fleece, through the placement of each jeer and the timing of each migration. This is more than documentation of survival strategies. It's wisdom encoded in every gesture, every traditional practice refined across centuries of testing against conditions that push human endurance to its absolute limits. The knowledge embedded in nomadic culture represents one of humanity's most sophisticated responses to environmental extremes. When you contemplate images of nomadic families moving across endless winter steppes, remember you're not simply observing people living in the present moment. You're witnessing a living continuity stretching back over 1,000 years, an unbroken chain of adaptation and resilience preserved in the collective memory of communities who have made mobility their strength rather than their vulnerability. This continuity carries profound fragility. We're aware that traditional nomadic life exists at a critical threshold, facing challenges that may exceed its adaptive capacity. Climate change is altering environmental patterns faster than traditional knowledge can adjust. Economic pressures are pulling younger generations towards settled lifestyles, threatening the transmission of skills that took millennia to develop. What will happen if these ancient systems of survival knowledge are lost? What forms of human resilience and environmental wisdom will disappear forever? These questions hang in the cold air like breath on a winter morning, challenging us to recognize and protect these extraordinary examples of human adaptation while they still exist. The wind that sweeps across Mongolia carries more than snow and cold. It carries stories, songs, the accumulated breath of generations who transformed one of Earth's most challenging environments into a sustainable way of life. It's a living library that whispers constantly, reminding us of both the fragility and the extraordinary resilience of human communities that have learned to thrive where survival itself seems impossible. Each gust of steppe wind is a reminder that we're part of a much larger story of human adaptation, a narrative of learning to live within natural limits rather than trying to dominate them. The nomadic way of life offers profound lessons about sustainability, community resilience, and the possibility of creating human cultures that enhance rather than degrade their environments. In the deep silence of Mongolian winter nights, when temperatures drop to 40 degrees C and the aurora dances overhead, you can almost hear this ancient conversation continuing, the exchange of knowledge and wisdom that has sustained nomadic communities through centuries of challenge and change, and that continues to offer hope for human adaptability in an uncertain future. Before there were weather satellites, before there were GPS systems, even before there were horses to transform nomadic mobility, there was a pattern, a deep rhythm pulsing through the Mongolian landscape like the heartbeat of the earth itself, guiding the movements of animals and the people who followed them across endless grasslands. This wasn't the pattern of modern migration routes. or the schedule of contemporary herding practices. It was something more fundamental, the original template of movement that shaped how life could exist sustainably on the steppes, a pattern so ancient and persistent that echoes of it still influence nomadic decisions today, even when families use modern vehicles and communication technology. We call this the migration resonance, the underlying rhythm of seasonal movement that has guided steppe life for millennia. It's not just the oldest evidence of nomadic adaptation we can detect in Mongolia. It's the deepest layer of environmental relationship that continues to influence how nomadic communities navigate their challenging world. To understand where this resonance comes from, we need to go back thousands of years to when the relationship between humans, animals, and the steppe environment first achieved the delicate balance that would sustain nomadic civilization. In those early centuries, trial and error gradually refined movement patterns that worked in harmony with seasonal changes, predator cycles, grass regeneration, and weather patterns. As nomadic culture developed and stabilized, something remarkable emerged. Communities began to move not just in response to immediate environmental pressures, but according to deeper rhythms that anticipated and prepared for future conditions. This created a form of collective intelligence that was greater than any individual family's knowledge, a distributed system of environmental awareness that spanned the entire steppe ecosystem. This migration resonance manifested in many ways. Seasonal movements that allowed grasslands to recover while ensuring livestock nutrition, timing patterns that positioned communities optimally for weather changes, social gatherings that occurred at locations and times that served multiple ecological and cultural functions simultaneously. What makes this resonance fascinating is that it created a form of steppe consciousness, a shared understanding of environmental patterns that connected nomadic groups across vast distances. Even communities that rarely interacted directly developed similar solutions to environmental challenges, suggesting they were all tuning into the same underlying ecological rhythms. Today, when we analyze modern nomadic movement patterns, we can detect echoes of this ancient resonance. Families using GPS and satellite weather data still find themselves drawn to traditional camping areas and migration timing that reflects patterns established thousands of years ago. Modern herding decisions often converge on solutions that echo ancestral practices, even when contemporary knowledge suggests different approaches. More remarkably, this resonance appears to be self-correcting. When environmental changes disrupt traditional patterns, nomadic communities don't just abandon their ancestral knowledge. They modify it in ways that maintain harmony with deeper ecological rhythms while adapting to new conditions. This suggests that the migration resonance isn't just historical artifact, but a living system that continues to evolve. The persistence of this pattern offers hope for the future of nomadic culture. Even as climate change and modernization create unprecedented challenges, the underlying ecological intelligence embedded in traditional nomadic life continues to guide adaptive responses. Communities that maintain connection to this deeper resonance demonstrate remarkable resilience in facing new environmental pressures. Understanding the migration resonance also reveals why nomadic survival skills remain relevant in our contemporary world. In an era of increasing environmental instability and resource scarcity, the nomadic approach of living in harmony with natural rhythms, rather than trying to dominate them, offers crucial wisdom for sustainable human development. The echoes of eternal migration remind us that human survival isn't just about individual resilience or technological solutions. It's about maintaining the deep ecological relationships that have sustained human communities through millennia of environmental challenges. In the vast silence of the Mongolian steppes, this ancient wisdom continues to pulse, offering guidance for navigating an uncertain future. Just as the steppes preserve the tracks of countless migrations in their grassland memory, Mongolian nomadic communities maintain living records of human adaptation beneath their apparent simplicity. In the profound silence of winter nights at 40-degree Celsius, we find mirrors of our own capacity to create meaning and resilience even under the most extreme conditions. Mongolia teaches us that survival isn't about conquering harsh environments, but about learning to move in harmony with forces larger than ourselves. These nomadic communities show us that true resilience comes not from rigid resistance to change, but from maintaining essential wisdom while continuously adapting to new realities. There's something almost magical in realizing that in 2025, families still live entirely mobile lives, following ancient migration patterns while incorporating satellite weather forecasting and solar panels into their traditional gears. That children learn to read weather signs and cloud formations while using tablets to communicate with relatives across the steppes. All this wisdom comes to us from simply listening to the stories that steppe winds carry. By studying how nomadic families adapt their survival techniques, how their migrations evolve while maintaining ecological balance, how life finds continuity even in Earth's most challenging mobile environments, we unlock a language of hope spoken through generations of steppe dwellers. A language that doesn't just describe survival, but demonstrates humanity's capacity to create sustainable ways of life anywhere on Earth, where movement and adaptation are possible. How do Mongolian nomads survive in the steppes at 40 degrees Celsius? This is the question that brought us here, whispered softly at the beginning like a child wondering if it's possible for anyone to really live their entire lives moving across frozen grasslands. After our journey through gears that breathe with the wind, migrations that follow invisible highways, and the breath of ancestors in cold air, we see it's not really just about surviving extreme cold. It's about how humans create mobile civilizations that enhance rather than degrade their environments, demonstrating that home isn't a place, but a way of moving through the world with wisdom and respect. Perhaps nomadic communities never cease to fascinate us because they're not just about surviving harsh conditions, but about maintaining the ancient dance between human needs and natural rhythms. Maybe they don't need permanent structures to create lasting homes. They can carry their civilization with them, creating stability through movement, finding security through adaptability, and building community through shared understanding of the land that sustains them. I hope this journey across Mongolia's eternal steppes helped you find peace and perhaps gave you a new perspective on what it means to live lightly on the earth while facing life's greatest challenges. I hope you discovered tranquility in contemplating these remarkable lives that prove human resilience has no fixed address, because this is what Mongolia offers us, not just vast spaces and extreme weather, but the freedom to reimagine what it means to live sustainably in relationship with forces beyond our control. And perhaps nomadic wisdom continues to guide us because the questions about how to live well on a changing planet never settle permanently. They require the same continuous movement and adaptation that has sustained steppe communities across centuries of challenge and change.